This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up? Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And you might be noticing something. You're like, guys, I've only seen this on the onside kick because Mark can't show up some weeks, but why am I looking at the Primetime Podcast logo? Why am I not seeing you guys on video? But we're doing a call-in podcast today. Brandon on remote for today. Lucky Brandon doesn't have to sit in the studio, so we're doing it over the phone. And before we get into everything, Brandon, before I kind of kick it off to housekeeping, the one thing I want to ask you is about this Clemson game that we saw over the past weekend, because when Trevor Lawrence got injured, I for sure thought I was going to get a game on you in the picks with Syracuse getting the win, but Clemson was able to pull it out.
Clemson was able to pull it out. I watched most of that game. It was good. It was a really good game. I think the reason why Clemson was able to win in the end, though, was because their running game was great. Their running great was great all game long, and they just got stronger as the game continued to go. ETN and others were phenomenal, and every time it seemed like they were just getting chunk yardage. And you could see that as time went on and the game went on, for Syracuse, their defense was tired, and they were out there for a really long time. While Syracuse battled and did a great job, Clemson's offense did a really good job. And defensively, don't take anything away from that Clemson defense either. They really showed up when they needed to late in the game.
No, and I can't wait I actually looked at it. In 2 weeks from today, we will have our first big board, and there's probably going to be a few of those Clemson players from their defensive side in our top 25 for our big board. But we got a jam-packed show for you guys. Going to be talking about some dark horses in the college football playoff. We're going to look at the Red River rivalry this weekend, how the Texas-Oklahoma game could affect the college football playoff. And then we're going to take a dive into the SEC. Yes, today we will be a couple of good old boys and look at Florida and if they or will they upset LSU and kind of ruin their college football playoff hopes. But before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That's where you can help support the podcast and become a guest on the podcast each and every month. You can also go get yourself an MVP t-shirt to help support the channel and rep the MVP logo. You can get that down below in the description or at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, I know, like I said, today, this week, we're going to be a couple of good old boys. We're going to talk about the SEC, but usually we're not. And make sure to go over to iTunes, if you would please, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, even if you're on YouTube. Go give us a 5-star rating and make sure to tell us why you like listening to the podcast each and every week. But Brandon, let's dive into our first topic, and we're going to look at kind of some college football playoff dark horses, because right now I kind of feel like if you asked anybody who their top four is, everyone has Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Clemson. They might be in a different order, but everyone's got those four teams listed in their top four. Then you got some other teams. LSU is still undefeated. Notre Dame's still undefeated. Oklahoma is still undefeated. West Virginia still undefeated. We're looking at those teams outside of the consensus top four right now for who could be kind of either a spoiler or who could get themselves into the college football playoff race later in the year. I just want to get right into it. I am going to go to you. Who is the one team outside the top four right now that you're looking at to, all right, watch this team, because later in the year they could sneak themselves into the top four and into the playoff?
Well, I think that a team that you have to be looking at right now that would probably stick out to a lot of people that really necessarily isn't a dark horse. I kind of had some other teams lined up, and I still do for an actual dark horse. This isn't a dark horse. This won't surprise anybody. But Oklahoma, and I think that they definitely are right on the map after the game that they played this past weekend against Baylor, and the way that Kyler Murray played. I mean, 6 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown. He's already accounted for 23 scores, I think, total on the season between passing and rushing. He's been absolutely incredible, and this offense looks great. No one can slow them. They are just going to continue to plow through. Now, they do have a couple of games remaining on the schedule that you look at and you go, okay, well, this will be interesting. But I think that Oklahoma is one of those teams where they're not going away. They're there. They're on the fringe, and they're not going away.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I mean, that the Big 12 is a tricky one because I know that when we talk about Texas and Oklahoma later in the show, they're one where I was looking at it, and I'll actually pull up the graphic now so I could reference it. Just on the basically playoff chances, because if you win the Big 12, you'll most likely have a chance to get in. Right now, Oklahoma has a 55% chance. West Virginia, who's undefeated, has a 20% chance. Texas is at 11%. If Oklahoma wins, they jump up to a 61% chance. But if Texas wins this weekend, it's basically 23% Texas, 23% West Virginia, and that Oklahoma one falls all the way to 36. So, I mean, with me, Oklahoma they have to win out, and they're one of those teams where it's like, if you win out, just put your hopes, your chances into the hands of the committee, because there's a chance that Oklahoma goes undefeated and still misses the playoffs because like a one-loss Alabama makes the playoffs like they did last year, because Ohio State looks dominant as well. And the one thing I forgot to bring up that you wanted to mention at the beginning of this topic is kind of with Penn State. Did Penn State kind of shoot themselves in the foot and kind of give the playoffs to Oklahoma with the decision that James Franklin made this past Saturday?
Well, I think it's, a lot of people will look at that game and say, well, that 4th and 5 draw play to end it, that's what screwed them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it was not. It was the fact that they had Ohio State where they wanted them in the first half, with Ohio State really struggling to get anything going offensively, and Penn State could not put them away then. That was Penn State's problem last year.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State wasn't able to put them away. They couldn't do it. And that's why Ohio State beat them by 1 point in that game. It's back-to-back heartbreakers for Penn State against Ohio State. It's a real shame, and it's frustrating. And it's frustrating just from a fan of college football to see a team who every single year they get ready to, go up against Big Brother, and they're ready and they're prepared. And then at the very end, they find a way to just gift it to Big Brother because, well, you're older and you're bigger, and, we'll just give it to you. And that's what they seem to do. And Penn State fans should be just absolutely sick to their stomachs because this now has happened 2 times, and you're not doing yourselves any favors.
And I love how me and you before this week were like, oh, it probably won't be a 1-point game. Like, the Buckeyes will probably run away with it. And it ends up being a 1-point game. And you talk about the fans. The one thing I want to point out is one of our loyal followers and patron to Most Valuable Podcast, Jake Neverman, he's a big Penn State guy. And there was a tweet with a video that just said, like, oh, James Franklin said his program is great while Ohio State is elite. And he explains the difference. Well, Jake quoted that video and said, I mean, you could have just passed, never mind. And like you said, most people are going to come down to that 4th and 1 draw that Penn State had. But
4th and 5.
4th and 5.
Remember, it wasn't 4th and 1. It was a 4th and 5. And I just want to jump in and I want to say, even if they pass and it's incomplete,
you're in the same situation.
You're in the same situation. So again, it's one of those situations, and I've said it before, if it works, you're golden. If it doesn't, everyone hates you. So it doesn't work either way, because if it was a pass, they would have found a way to say, well, he wasn't open. This guy over here was open. What kind of pass is that? Blah, blah, blah. They should have just run it. They would come and say something like that. But with Trace McSorley, the type of player that he is, the type of game he was having, you put the ball into your quarterback's hands, as many people have mentioned, as Dan Patrick was mentioning this morning, is the fact that at the end of the day, you want the ball in the hands of someone like a Kobe when Kobe was playing, LeBron, Magic when he was playing. Those are the types of guys you want to have you want them to have the ball. You want Trace McSorley to have the ball. He is the guy on your team who's going to win the game for you. And it was taken out of his hands, and that's the most unfortunate part about it.
It'd be like if Nick Saban in Alabama said, hey, Tua, I know you're doing great right now, but we're going to give it to Damian Harris to win us the game. All right? We're going to give it to Damian Harris instead of just putting the ball in Tua and his hands to win a game. Or if Ohio State was like, hey, we got all these playmakers, Haskins, we're not going to make you win us the game. So, I mean, that's what I think you're correct in that. For me, I am going to go with this team at the beginning of the year probably was not a dark horse, but because of what happened to them on September 22nd, could now turn into a dark horse. And this is kind of my going from least, they don't have that great of odds, that's why they're a dark horse, Virginia Tech. And the reason why I say that is watching this week at Duke, I was watching the game going, well, you know what? When I doubt Virginia Tech, they go out there and play well. When I don't doubt them, they go out and lose to Old Dominion. But what they got from Ryan Willis, if they could get that and he can do similar things, about 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, no INTs, this is a team where I look at the rest of their schedule, Notre Dame this week, which is going to be a big one, and I believe that one is at home for Virginia Tech. They get a big game there. They still get a game later in the year against Miami, and if they do well in the ACC, could still get into the ACC title game where they would most likely play Clemson, who could be a top 4 team. So for me, Virginia Tech is just one that I put there for a dark horse because you look at their schedule and who they could play if they play well is if you beat Notre Dame, that's one to put on the resume. You beat Miami, you get a chance to play Clemson. And if you beat Clemson with wins over an undefeated Notre Dame and what many people are thinking is an undefeated Clemson team, Virginia Tech could be one of those teams that plays themselves into the college football playoff. The only question is, and this is why they're the true dark horse, is can their backup quarterback, Ryan Willis, give them that chance and play well enough to give them the chance to be a playoff team?
Well, I think that's the thing. You know, with Virginia Tech, they have that big loss to Old Dominion, and then a lot of people don't have any faith in them against Duke. And I was one of those people, and you too were one of those people, because you picked the Blue Devils. But I think Virginia Tech, what they need to do now, what is a must, is they have to win the rest of their games. They have to be able to do that. And if they cannot do that, they do not have any hope, because they will not be the team coming out of the ACC. If there's going to be one team coming out of the ACC, it will be Clemson, and especially for what Clemson showed this past week. And no, they weren't playing an Alabama team, but they were playing a much improved, very competitive Syracuse team. So Virginia Tech has to get back on the map and show that, hey, we're still alive here in the ACC. We may need a crutch or two, but we are still alive over here. And if they don't do that, they are going to be in very big trouble, which is why, like I said, they need to be able to win every single game here on out. And for them to really, to their credit, they would need to be able to do that pretty convincingly, like big wins, blowout wins, to have someone then go and say, well, look at this Virginia Tech team. They're not only winning these games, they are blowing these teams out. That's how they need to be able to do it.
And the one thing that helps them is the team on the opposite side of them in their division in Miami only has one ranked opponent, I believe, on their schedule. And right now, that is the 24 or 25th ranked VT Hokies. Who's your next team? You said that you already gave the first one. Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to say and get to is that after this past weekend, chance to send a team to the college football playoff, the SEC right now, 97%, obviously. With them sending multiple teams, 39%. The Big Ten at 86%, multiple teams, 14%. The ACC, 60%. For multiple teams, a 0.6% chance. So they are not getting 2 teams. That is certain. So that's why it's even more important for Virginia Tech to get themselves back on the map and get playing some good football, because Clemson seems like they are going to continue to do that as well. And the Pac-12 is way down, and even the percentage for themselves at 16% with the Big 12, then at 40%, and Notre Dame at 47%.
I like that
to reach the college playoff.
I find it funny that Notre Dame right now has a better chance to make the playoff than two entire conferences, the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Like, and I know that's because Stanford lost to them, and Stanford was like, after USC got knocked down, it's like, okay, Stanford's one of the only hopes for the Pac-12 now, and then they lose to Notre Dame. The Big 12, like I said, even an undefeated Oklahoma might miss the playoffs, and why they could be considered dark horses, like you said. But I look at that and I find it funny that Notre Dame has a better chance right now to make the playoffs than two complete conferences.
No, I love it. I think it's hysterical, but I think it also goes and speaks to kind of where the Pac-12 is right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, when Notre Dame beat Stanford, I think that dropped their chances significantly. And when Washington lost to Auburn, mm-hmm. It didn't drop them significantly then, but it did take a little bit of a hit. But certainly with Notre Dame beating Stanford, that hurt. With USC's lack of success this season, that's hurt them as well. So the Pac-12, they continue to be the least powerful of the Power 5 conferences, that's for sure.
Who's your next dark horse team?
Yeah, getting into my next one, I am keeping it in the Big 12 with the Mountaineers of West Virginia. They have been really good. I mean, if you look at their offense, which I did, I mean, certainly over this weekend I was able to catch some of their game too. I was flipping between their game and with the Red Raiders, and then the Clemson game with Syracuse. And seeing Will Grier and the throws that he's making, he is looking so confident. He's making throws that an NFL quarterback would be making. And who would have thought that when Will Grier was at Florida? Everyone wanted Will Grier to never reach the light of day for another game for Florida, let alone be someone who could make it to the NFL. But this West Virginia team is very good offensively. Defensively, they still have some work to do. They were up 35-10 for a good part of the game, and the final score was 42-34. But when it mattered, they had a huge interception return for a touchdown. That was Keith Washington, who picked off Jet Duffy, who was the backup who came in because the starting quarterback, Alan Bowman, got hurt. Actually, a collapsed lung. He's still in the hospital, which, prayers for him that he'll be okay in a speedy recovery. But I think you look at this game, and when they needed it, West Virginia did get their defense, and certainly their offense was good throughout the day. They only had one sack on the day, but this was a team overall that you look at and you think, I wouldn't want to face them, because while their defense may not be phenomenal, they did have enough to win in a very, very big, high scoring clash between two teams that can really put up a lot of points, as we've seen historically. But they did enough, and this offense is just scary, because if you put this offense up, and they will be put up against Texas, they will be put up against TCU, they will be put up against Oklahoma to end the season. So it's going to come down to the very end, and I think we're going to be looking at West Virginia and Oklahoma being the two teams that fight it out. And I don't want to throw Texas to the wind. I don't want to do that. But right now, I don't know if Texas has enough offense to compete with these two teams. They're a good team, and while Texas is very good, I think that they're almost too balanced, Ricky, whereas a West Virginia team or an Oklahoma team, they're just going to put up so many points on you, you're not going to be able to come back from it.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that I look at, too, is, I kind of mentioned this when you brought up Oklahoma, is I could see West Virginia being an undefeated team this season, beating Oklahoma. Not saying that would be my pick, but I could see it happening, and then them not making the playoff because the committee favors a one-loss Georgia or a one-loss Alabama team over them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Big 12, because there's an obvious favorite, as you brought up the graphic with 97% that the SEC sends one team, that it's a 39, like the SEC has their percentage to send multiple teams is only 8% below Notre Dame, and they're just one team. So, I mean, take that into consideration, that the SEC almost has a similar percentage to send two teams that one independent team has to make the playoffs themselves. And, I mean, that's the kind of situation that I think we're in with the Big 12. And, like, for me, I kind of move over into that SEC, which there's some teams in that conference that could play spoiler. LSU, one we've talked about in the past, they're right now at number 5. Auburn, who will get that same chance to play LSU and Alabama later this year. I believe Auburn also plays Georgia as well. But a team I am looking at, and they're a team that this past week got a good win over South Carolina after upsetting Mississippi State 28-7 just 2 weeks ago. I'm looking at the Kentucky Wildcats as a true dark horse in that conference because, yes,
and
they don't.
I was right there with you. I had the same
Did
thinking.
you?
They were going to be my third one. I'm not lying to you. They were going to be. They were absolutely going to be one of mine, and I am interested to hear the reasons you give because I'll certainly chime in.
Well, I mean, for me, it's yes, they don't play Auburn. They don't play LSU. They're not playing the Auburn, Alabama, LSU. I almost said Oklahoma, and I'm like, they're not in the SEC. But the thing I look at with Kentucky is, for me, they can beat, like, Texas A&M will be a tough opponent at Texas A&M in College Station, but they could win that game. They can beat Vanderbilt. They can beat Mizzou. They can beat Tennessee. For me, the big game comes down to is can this team host Georgia on November 2nd and upset the Georgia Bulldogs? If this team upsets Georgia and takes care of business in all the other games, I think that Kentucky could be a team that we talk about as like a, holy crap, Georgia didn't make the SEC title game, and Georgia could have the Alabama syndrome of last year where they lose, they're not in the SEC title game. If, let's say, Alabama wins the title game, then there's a decision to make. But I look at Kentucky and I go, with how they've played, with the opponents that they have, if they take care of business and then shock the world at the first weekend of November, this could be a team that could be a true dark horse in the SEC.
I think you're right. I think you're right there. And I think that one of the things is, excuse me, if you look at the last 2 weeks, they've allowed just 17 points combined to teams like Mississippi State and South Carolina, two teams that a lot of people believed would be very, very good this season in the SEC. And as we now have seen, Mississippi State is 3-2 and South Carolina is 2-2, while Kentucky, someone that really I don't think many people were talking about, is 5-0. Kentucky's defense lately has been getting it done, and they've been providing plenty of offense to be able to do that too. And also, the next big game is not the Georgia game. The next big game is going to be this weekend on the road at Texas A&M. But if you look, Texas A&M just barely beat an Arkansas team that has been horrific all season long. So Texas A&M is not necessarily sitting pretty in this one, even with the game being at home, because we saw what Kentucky did when they went into Florida. And Florida, a team that I think thought that they had that game in the bag before the game even got kicked off. And Kentucky won 27-16. This Kentucky Wildcat team is a true dark horse just for this season. No one saw them coming at all to be 5-0, to beat Florida, to beat Mississippi State. I think that right now, Kentucky, they have the upper hand. They're playing, I think, better football, and they're hot. And you always have to be scared of a team that's hot. Now, at the quarterback position, there's nothing really special going on there in terms of what's happening, because Terry Wilson, just shy of 600 yards on the season, only 2 touchdowns and 5 interceptions through the air, 3 rushing touchdowns. to add to that as well. But where Kentucky really has been getting it done is on the ground with Benny Snell Jr. 115 carries, 639 yards, and 8 touchdowns. This guy has really been providing a great boost so far this year for Kentucky. 3 out of his 5 games, he's had 100 yards or more, and it could have been 4 out of the 5 games because he had 99 yards against South Carolina, but 175 on the ground against Florida without a touchdown. He's also scored in 4 out of the 5 games. He has been providing them such a luxury from that running back position. He's been outstanding. And if he's continuing to have that type of success against Texas A&M and for the rest of the season, I'm serious. Watch out for this Kentucky team.
Now, you said that was going to be your third one, so I'll go ahead and give my last one, my third one. And this, to me, out of all 3 of the teams, this is why I left them for last, the ultimate dark horse. Like, there are dark horses, and then there is this team. And for me,
are you going to make me mad with this? I
might, just by mentioning their name, but the reason why they're a dark horse is because I don't think there will be ever a world, even though I would love to see it, there will ever be a world that the UCF Golden Knights make the college football playoff. And the reason why I bring them up as a dark horse is because the college football executive director, Bill Hancock, was actually asked about this at Thursday when he attended the North Carolina-Miami game in Miami. And he was asked about, could there be a path for the Golden Knights to be in the college football playoff? And here's his quote. He said, "Yes, there is a path. UCF got full consideration from the committee last year. I believe the committee at the end of the season had ranked UCF higher than the sports writers and the coaches had. So they got every consideration, and they had a wonderful season." He later on said, "For the path, play a good schedule, win your games, and you're going to be in the hunt for the college football playoff." And one of the things that people have come out and said is about the schedule. So far, they've played UConn, South Carolina State, North Carolina that got canceled. You have FAU and Pittsburgh. Coming up, they have SMU, Memphis, East Carolina, Temple, Navy, Cincinnati, and then South Florida. And one of those people who have said their schedule is just not tough enough is Paul Feinbaum. Is there a world in your mind, Brandon, where an undefeated UCF team makes the playoffs? Because last year, they finished the AP Top 25 as the 6th team in the country.
Ricky, their schedule last season was more difficult, and they finished the number 6 team in the country. This team, as you just said, this team this year is facing a much less difficult schedule. There is nobody on that schedule. Mm-hmm. No one ranked, not one ranked team as of right now, not one ranked team that they would be playing. Not one. Ricky, this schedule is so soft in terms of what the committee would want to look at and see, okay, well, should they be in the college football playoff? No, they shouldn't be because of that. While they're not a bad team, I mean, if you win all your games, you're not bad, but are you good enough to be in the college football playoff discussion? I don't think so. I mean, it seemed like an Ohio State who wins all of their games. Yeah, they're good enough to be in that discussion. They're certainly good enough. I mean, look at their schedule, look at the teams that they've played, and look at the scores that they've played too in the tough games that they've had to endure as well. Like that Penn State game, that was a tough game that they had to be able to endure. There's been no tough game that UCF is having to endure at all. And now people would say, well, you shouldn't knock a team for being so much better. Well, then UCF should probably find themselves a new conference. I mean, if UCF, I mean, they could probably go and be the best team in the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think that would be hard to do. But there's no way that the UCF Golden Knights, the UCF Knights, and not Golden, but the UCF Knights should be anywhere near the college football playoff. Nowhere near it. Well, give them a good bowl game, award them in that way, but nowhere near deserving of the biggest honor in college football. There's just no way. It would be senseless to allow that to happen.
Well, and the thing that I'm going to kind of bring up is when it comes to UCF and those smaller teams, it basically, I look at it and there are some teams where it might be hard for a team like UCF to schedule even a non-conference game against a ranked foe, because there are many teams fighting for a playoff spot, and if there's even a question that UCF can upset me and I'm like the, let's say, 20th ranked team in the country, let's say I was VT coming into this season, no way am I scheduling you, because I am not helping you. Like, there's too much risk to outweigh the reward for that. And like, I look into the future ball where the out of conference schedule that they will have next year, they will actually have Stanford on the schedule, which is going to be a shocker. Like September 14th of 2019, they'll play Stanford. They get Houston again. But other than that, they're playing similar teams that they played this year. 2020, you get Georgia Tech, but I mean, Georgia Tech this year isn't a ranked Power 5 team. 2021, you're at Louisville, but we don't even know. Like, that's way too far down the line. 2021 and 22, they're playing Louisville, but we don't know if Louisville is going to be even the same team, because like I said, that's 4 or 5 years, or I'm sorry, 3 or 4 years down the line. But that's another challenge, because one thing I saw, I know this is college basketball, but I wanted to bring this up. I read an article today that like the Power 5 teams, or the like teams that are higher than Loyola's conference, are not scheduling. Like, Loyola is like, hey, we'll play you for a game in non-conference season. They'll be like, no way, we don't want to play you, because there's so much risk to, if they lose a game against a non-Power 5 team early in the year, where it's like, hey, you know what, one loss could kill us in the college football playoff, even though we've seen one-loss teams get in. Do you have any final thoughts or final anything you want to say before we move on into our next topic?
Well, UCF, they're in a difficult situation, and you mentioned it, especially after last year. What teams are going to look at them and say, yeah, sure, we'll play you? You know, what team like an Alabama or a Clemson necessarily wants to put them on their schedule, because they don't want to blemish it any more than what might happen with a team like this that has played extremely well. But at the same time, I mean, I don't necessarily want to change the system. You know, we had it for a long time with the BCS, and now we have the playoff format as it is right now. I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong or broken with it. There's always, as I said last year, there's always going to be snubs. There's always going to be people that aren't happy with what happens at the end of the season. There always is going to be. That is never going away. And if we say, let's expand it to 8, you still have the same problem. Let's expand it to 12, same problem. The same thing happens, and I've repeated this before, the same thing happens when you have 68 teams competing in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Same thing happens there. You always have a snub. That is not going to go away. There's always going to be a team or multiple teams that believe they played extremely well to get to that point to not be in it. And I don't think, I mean, you can expand it to 8 teams. I don't think UCF is going to be one of those 8 teams. I don't think that would happen. There's so many better teams with better schedules playing better football. And I'm not saying that they're not playing good football, but it's nowhere near the talent level of these other teams. I would love to see them go up against an Oklahoma. I would love to see them go up against an Alabama, a Clemson, a Georgia, an Ohio State, all of those top teams, so that everyone who is a UCF needs to be in the playoff format cheerleader. Exactly what happens. And for those of us who are a UCF should be nowhere near the playoff format, we can see what happens as well. But that's not going to happen. I wish it would, so we could see it, just to have those games. I'm not saying to put them in the playoffs. I'm saying to have those games throughout the season. But for the foreseeable future, that is not going to be the case. That is not going to happen. And they're still going to continue to be in this position. And knowing UCF, they're still going to continue to pretend like they win.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the big thing is there's no perfect system, where part of me feels like the Boise States from years ago, the UCFs now, part of me wants to give them a chance because it's like, hey, you know what? Going undefeated is no, task that, your schedule was easy, so we're not going to look at your undefeated season. But really, it's you want to play tougher opponents. Opponents aren't going to risk their playoff chances on playing you, and right now it's just that sticky situation. Maybe in 2021, 2022, things change. If maybe Louisville's a better team and they're ranked at that time and things change there. But let us know
I will say this, one final thing, is if it got to the point where teams were playing each other and you had, let's say, two losses from an Ohio State. I'm just throwing things out there crazily. Two losses from an Ohio State. Two losses from a Oklahoma or something like that, where these teams, they've found a way to have multiple losses, and you still have, let's say, an Alabama and a Clemson with no losses, and then you have your UCF sitting there perfectly. That's when, if you have no one loss and everyone after that is two losses, and UCF is up there sitting at 5, maybe 6. That's when maybe you say, okay, do we want to be fair about this, or do we just want to put the teams that have always been in it? Now, I don't think that would have been the case last year because UCF was at 13 at the time. They weren't anywhere close to be able to do it. There were teams in front of them that still deserved it more. I mean, I don't think that there'd be too many people who would argue that point. But I will say, if that scenario ever happened, where you had multiple lost teams, and then them sitting there at a 6, at a 5, because they were 13-0 or 12-0, that's when maybe someone starts to say, because UCF is right over here, let's just do it. Let's just put them in. They're clearly, an undefeated team. They have maybe not the best schedule, but they have no losses. This team has 2 losses, not 1, 2. So maybe we should put them in because they're not far enough back where we could get away saying, they were 13. We couldn't jump them in front of all these teams, but they were 6. They were 5. Something like that. I don't know if that would ever happen. But at that point, you almost have to say, well, we can't really push it off much longer. We kind of have to put it in.
And before we wrap it up, just to put it in perspective, this year UCF started the preseason ranked 21st, and now they're ranked 12th, I believe, in the rankings this week.
Yes.
Last year, they were unranked, obviously, because I believe they went 0-12 the year before Scott Frost, but they were unranked at the beginning of last season. By this time last year, they were just cracking into the top 25 at 25. So you have a little bit of a higher starting ground to start on after 6 weeks of the college football season compared to last week when you were dead last in the rankings at 25 or at 25. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think. Who are your dark horses? Do you believe with some of our dark horses? Do you think that they are true dark horses? What do you guys think for the college football playoff? Who is going to be dark horses and who could upset the status quo at the top of the rankings? But Brandon, let's jump into our next topic, and what we are taking a look at is a little bit more of a deeper look at what we talked about in the first segment when it comes to the Big 12, but mainly one game's effect on what it could mean for the college football playoff. But before we get into that fully, we're going to look at the Red River rivalry going on this weekend. Number 19, Texas, going into, or they're the away team. Oklahoma's the home team at 5-0. They're the number 7 team in the country. Right now, if you looked at it, the matchup predictor on ESPN has Oklahoma at a 73% chance to win the game. Texas is a 26 or 27% to win the game this weekend. Before we get into what this could mean for the college football playoff, if like a Texas upsets Oklahoma, what are your thoughts about this game heading into this weekend?
Dickie, honestly, I look at this and I think, yeah, those predictors seem pretty right to me. Oklahoma, seeing what they did last weekend against the Baylor Bears, putting up 66 points. I know they allowed 33, and that's plenty of points to allow. But putting up 66 for Oklahoma with 6 touchdowns through the air for Kyler Murray, the guy who didn't get the start because he was late to practice on Friday. He missed 3 snaps, and they said, Kyler, go do your thing, buddy. And that's exactly what he did after Austin Kendall went a measly 0 for 2.
Well, he's got
Kyler
baseball
Murray,
on the mind.
Yeah. 432 yards on 17 of 21 passing. 17 of 21 passing. He was just precise with his passes. And 6 touchdowns, and added 1 on the ground on 10 carries for 45 yards. This Oklahoma team has so much firepower. And then defensively, they force 3 fumbles, recover 1. They sack Charlie Brewer 6 times. This was an incredible display by Oklahoma, minus allowing 33 points. It would have been a lot better. But they still win by 33 points. I just don't see a scenario, truly, I don't see a scenario where Texas wins this game. Not only are they not at home, they're going into an environment of a team that is so pumped right now, that is just on an absolute roll right now. Oklahoma seems to be doing no wrong, and while Texas has had a very good run, I think it might end here.
Well, and the only thing that helps Texas is they're not at home, but at least they're not at Oklahoma. This is a neutral site game technically for the Big 12. And for me, Texas is the one I look at and I go, they're the biggest question mark to me, because it's like, wait a second, what Texas should I believe in? The Texas that opened the year, that blew the game to Maryland from game 1, or the one that barely beat a Tulsa team, or the one that blew out USC? Blew out, I'm going to say 31-16. It was close for a while, but 31-16 beat TCU, and many people thought they wouldn't, but then they only win 19-14 at Kansas State. And I know playing in Manhattan is tough in the Big 12, but it's like, what Texas team am I going to get? Am I going to get a Texas team that I've seen in these close games, or am I going to get a Texas team that hosted USC, hosted TCU? And I think that's the big thing of it, is this is a neutral site game, which means it is not in Austin, Texas. And is Texas just one of those teams this year that, hey, except for, even the Maryland game, that was a neutral site game as well, where most of the games that you've played away from Texas has either been a close loss that you lost to Maryland, or a narrow victory 19-14. And for me, I'm not as far on the side of you as, like, I could see in my crystal ball, there is a reality where Texas wins this game. I just don't know how we get to it, because even if you look at the 2 games that were close for Oklahoma, Kyler Murray was good. I know the Army game, he didn't have as many attempts. He only had 15 attempts in that game, but still 11 of 15 on the game, only 165 yards, but 3 touchdowns in that game and only 1 interception. Now, Army's quarterback could have been why it was close, because he had over 100 yards rushing on the night and had a touchdown of his own. But even look at the game against Iowa State, where they only won by 10. They went into halftime up 24-10 in that game. Kyler Murray had 3 touchdowns, 348 yards in that one, to where I wonder if Texas, it's either going to be, can Texas's defense limit Kyler Murray, or can the Texas offense keep up with Lincoln Riley's fast-paced, high-scoring Sooners team?
I think that's the biggest key here, Ricky, is one, that Kyler Murray has actually only turned the football over 2 times on the season with 2 interceptions, and he has 17 passing touchdowns through the air. In their 5 games, they've put up 63, 49, 37, 28, and then 66. They're scoring almost 20 more points a game than Texas is, and of course they've play different schedules, face different opponents. Texas has faced a more difficult schedule with Maryland on there. They were a difficult opponent for Texas. They have been for 2 years in a row now. And with USC, and obviously USC is not what they have been, but that was looked at as being a very difficult game for Texas. TCU, that was supposed to be a difficult game, and then Kansas State, not looked at it a lot by being a supreme power, but Texas only beat them 19-14. While Texas is certainly allowing less points on the season per game than is Oklahoma. I want to see where's Texas going to come up with all these extra points that they're going to need to find to beat a team like Oklahoma. Now, because I don't see Texas being able to hold down Kyler Murray for a long time. Because if you think you've got him where you've stymied him in the passing game, all of a sudden he's running all over you. And when you finally think that, okay, we've stopped him from running, we're not going to allow him to run and get loose out of the pocket, well, then he's hanging in the pocket finding a way to beat you. That's why Kyler Murray is so good. That's why he I think, kind of solidified his name as a Heisman candidate this past weekend for sure. But you look at that and you think, how do you stop him? And how do you limit him? And if you limit him in one aspect, is he going to beat you in the other? And I'm not going to say that Oklahoma gets to their season average of 48 points per game. I'm not going to say that they will, but even if they, let's say, get to 35, Texas is only averaging 28. Are they able to find a way to get there? Because they haven't been putting up, a ton of points the way that Oklahoma has. And I guess I look at it as this is going to be, this is a game that has quite a lot at stake for the Big 12 in general. You throw in West Virginia there, and their chances go actually up or down based on who wins this game. But I want to know, because of how good Kyler Murray has been, and clearly in this last game for Oklahoma too, the running game was pretty good, even outside of Kyler Murray. What's Texas's game plan to come into this game and find a way to win? That's going to be the ultimate thing. Does Texas have a good enough game plan to shut down or limit enough Kyler Murray and the Sooners? And I'm not sure that they've got that game plan, because Murray is very good, and he has shown it time after time after time so far this season.
Yeah, and the game that I think back to, mainly because I was not shocked that they won, because I believe I picked them that week, but I was shocked to see the outcome of how far they jumped out, was that USC game where they end up winning 37-14. But if you look at that game, you had Sam Ellinger, who 2 touchdowns, no INTs, 22-3, 223 as on normal people say that, yards in that game. Whereas JT Daniels, no touchdowns, 1 INT, even though he had over 300 yards. The thing that I like from the quarterback play with Texas is that they haven't thrown an interception since game 1 against Maryland, and that might be the big thing alone. It might not be just the game plan, X's and O's, that's what the coaches are going to do. Duh, that's how you win the game. Boom, John Madden, however you want to look at it. But basically the just bonehead kind of answer is going to be whichever team forces the turnovers is going to win this game. And so far, you mentioned it, Kyler Murray only has 2 on the year. You look at Sam Ellinger, too. He only has 2 on the year. So it's which one of these quarterbacks is going to make the mistakes. That is going to be, to me, the crux of this game is whichever quarterback makes the mistakes. It could be 1, could be 2, could be 3, could be 5. We don't know. But whichever quarterback makes more mistakes is the one whose team is going to lose. And you mentioned how much is riding on this game. I read them during our first segment, but if you're just checking us out on YouTube, right now, the chances to win the Big 12, 55% for Oklahoma, 11% for Texas. If Oklahoma wins, their odds jump up to 61. Texas falls to 6%. But if Texas wins this game, the Sooners fall to 36% chance. Texas goes up to 23% chance, which West Virginia would be in that same boat with 23%. And this question I'm going to ask you because it relates to what I wanted to bring in with the college football playoff, but this should probably be the informal way or the not PC way to ask this question is, should the Big 12, like the committee, the board, the directors who run the Big 12 conference, should they be rooting for Oklahoma in this one? I know that it's like, oh, you're not supposed to root. Anything that's good for the conference is good for the conference. Should they be rooting for Oklahoma in this one? Because, as we mentioned in our Dark Horse segment, if Oklahoma loses this game, then you're putting, all your baskets in West Virginia to go undefeated. But then if Oklahoma then beats West Virginia, there's a chance that your team's, your conference's playoff chance goes to a big old fat goose egg because your top two teams have one loss.
I don't necessarily know if they need to be rooting for Oklahoma for that. I think they want to be rooting for probably a good game on both sides, and they probably don't want to be rooting for a blowout because they certainly don't want to see that, because at the end of the day, let's say Oklahoma loses and it is their only loss on the season, but it's a 1 to 5 point loss, let's put it in there, and depending on what everyone else does, maybe Oklahoma still has a chance at that point. So I don't think you necessarily want to be rooting for Oklahoma. I think you want to just be rooting for a good game.
How do you think this is going to affect the playoff? If Oklahoma wins, do they get in? Well, I know it depends on what they do against West Virginia later, but what do you think happens if Oklahoma wins? What do you think could happen if Texas wins in terms of the college football playoff?
I think that if I think if Oklahoma wins the rest of the way out, they've got Baylor on the road at Oklahoma State, which has been a very inconsistent team. West Virginia is going to be their biggest one. Excuse me, I'm looking at Texas's schedule. So for Oklahoma, they would be playing on the road at TCU. TCU, it kind of goes true for TCU. They've been a bit of an up and down team. East State, they should be able to handle. Texas Tech showed that they can't put up a lot of offense. Then they've got that Oklahoma State team, again, an up and down team. They've got a Kansas team who shouldn't even be having a football program. And then you've got on the road to West Virginia. I like Oklahoma's schedule kind of the rest of the way. Here's the whole thing for me. If they win, their chances for me to be alive for the college football playoff will come down to the November 23rd game on the road at West Virginia. I really do. I think that will be what it comes down to, because I think West Virginia has a road where they could possibly win all the rest of their games, and it could come down to that final game. For Texas, they already have a loss on their schedule, and for Texas, they play that Oklahoma game. They'll play Baylor, should win. They play on the road at Oklahoma State, and again, that's a team where I think that Oklahoma State, they've been up and down. They'll play West Virginia at home. West Virginia's team, again, they're a team that has a lot of offense and finds a lot of ways to score. And then they'll play on the road at Texas Tech. And then they'll play ISU and Kansas to close out the season. So the road for Texas, I think, is more difficult, especially with already a loss on the schedule. For Oklahoma, I think it's a little bit better. because they have no loss. That's, we're assuming that, let's say Oklahoma for them, they win the game. You look at the rest of their schedule, they're not looking too bad until that final game. For Texas, if they win, they still have just that one loss, but there's many more chances for them to have another loss. 2 losses, you're really kind of down in the weeds. There's really not a whole lot of chance for you to be able to come out of that. Not a whole lot of chance. We've seen crazy things happening in college football, but I think that would be really tough. I think that we're going to see a pretty good football game, but it may only be for a little bit. I think that one team's going to have an upper hand in this one.
I'm going to say this. If Texas wins this game, then the Big 12 is not making the college football playoff. Like, if you are a fan of the Big 12 and want a Big 12 team in the college football playoff, you are rooting for the Sooners this weekend because, yes, Texas could technically win out, but like you said, there are more opportunities for them to lose. Texas Tech is on the road. They've been a good team this year. You've got ranked Oklahoma State. You've got West Virginia, although that one being at home could help out Texas. Oklahoma is a team, their schedule, yes, they play the same teams. They play Texas Tech on the road. They play Oklahoma State. They play West Virginia, and that one is even in Morgantown. It's not even in Norman to end the regular season, but I feel like a undefeated, like either West Virginia or Oklahoma have to go undefeated for a Big 12 team to make the college football playoff, because to me, there's only one conference that could have a one-loss team make the playoff, and that is the SEC. You look at Alabama, they've been as dominant as ever, and yes, they play LSU. That's going to be a tough one in November. They play Auburn in the Iron Bowl to end the year. Georgia as well. They've been a team where I think their closest win came to Mizzou, 43-29. So they've been just as dominant, but yet again, they'll get Florida. They're going to get a stretch where they get at LSU, home against Florida, at Kentucky, home against Auburn. So Georgia will be tested in that October, November months. Ohio State, right now I think they are, I know it's ludicrous to say this, I think either them or Alabama are the favorites, and I think Ohio State, based on their schedule, is the favorite for me to get into the playoff because they just got through their toughest opponent. Like, it's fast forward that season to the last game of the year between them and Michigan, because I think they win every single one, even that Michigan game as of right now. And then you got Clemson. And the thing about Clemson that is interesting is that Trevor Lawrence injury. Right now they were saying, we're recording this on Monday night, like, oh, he could practice Monday. We don't know what that next strain injury is going to be. And if he does miss time, if he does play and has to come out, if there will be an opponent that jumps on Clemson and beats them if Lawrence has to come out of a game. So, I mean, there's some questions with the top four, but I feel like if you're wanting a Big 12 team in the playoff, Oklahoma's got to win this weekend, because if Texas wins, they might just put a gun to the playoff chances of the Big 12 and be pulling the trigger with a win in the Red River Showdown this weekend.
Yeah, and Ricky, I think when you look at and examine the top four right now, I know that that's not what this segment necessarily is, but it could kind of go to where we're talking here. So with Alabama, there's really nothing to worry about until it's LSU and it's Auburn. And I think probably at this point a little bit maybe more LSU than it is Auburn, if you're going to worry about either one of them. At Clemson, you shouldn't worry about any other team on your schedule right now, and I'm being completely honest about that. NC State has not looked as strong as I thought they would this season, and no one else on Clemson's schedule looks difficult at all. For Georgia, I think that you take a look at them and you almost maybe want to think that game against Kentucky is going to be exciting or interesting, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to be something that turns into anything. The LSU game on the road, okay, that could be interesting too, because Jake Fromm hasn't necessarily come out of the gate firing every single week. So there's still some questions here for Georgia, as they have LSU, Florida, Kentucky, Auburn, 4 games straight in a row, and they've got 2 of those on the road, LSU and Kentucky. Those will both be interesting games, but all 4 of them will certainly be interesting. And then who's the last team that I haven't talked about? Oh, and then that's going to be Ohio State. This past week, I think you're right, Ricky. I really think that this was probably the most difficult game on their schedule. I still like to believe that Indiana is going to be somewhat fun, and Indiana's going to come out.
They usually try to make it fun.
And attack them, right away. But they play Michigan State on the road. Michigan State, I thought, for a minute was going to lose to Central Michigan, and I was going to have a bit of a blow-up because I'm like, what is wrong with these idiots? And then the Michigan game will be an interesting one. We'd like to at least make it an interesting one at the end of the year. But right now, for Clemson, in my mind, they're locked. Also, in my mind, Alabama's locked. The way that they've played, the way they've put up points, everyone thought that the Alabama-Texas A&M game was going to be something after what Texas A&M did to Clemson. No, not the case. It was pretty dull. Alabama had the upper hand for most of the game. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I locked those 2. Georgia I can't lock yet. And Ohio State, I had pretty much locked them. So that final spot is I don't want to say up for grabs. But if you look at all of it and you want to, do hypotheticals, which we love to do in this type of situation. So we'll hypothetically speak that the final spot is up for grabs. That is why this weekend is so important for Oklahoma. And that is why the Sooners need this big time, because if they get this, they'll be undefeated heading into the rest of their schedule, which that scares me the most. And the rest of their schedule comes down to that final game against West Virginia. So this is a big must for the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, and I mean, the last thing I'll say, especially about the top 4, the SECs, we've talked about it ad nauseum. They all play the same opponents. Ohio State, that Michigan team looks a little bit better than the team we saw week 1 against Notre Dame, although they looked better later in that game after halftime than they did in the first half. That one could still be tough, but, I mean, Jim Harbaugh's proven that he can't beat the Buckeyes, so why should you have faith in Michigan in that one? And then Clemson, they've got a quarterback injury, and if the neck strain is no problem and Lawrence goes out there, then I have all the confidence in the world that this Clemson team will finish undefeated. But and I know that their backup quarterback looked good in the game against Syracuse, but let's put them under fire against some of these teams in the ACC. Anything can happen on any given Saturday. There's also LSU, if they finish undefeated. Notre Dame, they've got a big game this weekend against Virginia Tech that could change everything. So I think this game is interesting, but if you're a Big 12 fan, like I said, you're rooting for Oklahoma, because Oklahoma and West Virginia are your only chances to make the college football playoff. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. What are you thinking about the game? What do you think it means for the college football playoff? And what are your kind of thoughts about the college football playoffs in general? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. And Brandon, let's move on into our next topic before we go ahead and make our picks for week number 6. I'll be completely honest. I looked, the table is not up, the camera is not up, but I pointed my hand at the camera like I usually would, and there's no camera there this week. So I was just pointing at a blank corner of the studio that has no camera in it this week. But you are coming into this segment because, Brandon, we got to do it. We haven't done it in a while, but I guess as the iTunes comment says on our iTunes review, we got to be a couple of good old boys and talk about the SEC. And we're going to take a look at an upcoming matchup coming up this week, actually. the Florida Gators against the LSU Tigers. And Brandon, I'm just going to be frank and ask you, Florida, they've been on a run of 2 games, I believe, in the last 2. Will they upset LSU and virtually upset the Tigers' college football playoff hopes?
I think Florida has a very good chance to do so. I think that Florida, they have been rolling. They've been very good. And I know that LSU is on a roll. I mean, they've won 5 games in a row. We certainly can't take anything away from them. They beat Miami, number 8 at the time to win that game 1. And are they 8 right now? Is Miami 8 right now, or what were they?
At the time of that loss, what were they? Let's see. If I look at my fancy computer
what
here.
What is Miami now? Miami now is 17. At that time, they were 8. At that time, they were the number 8 team.
Yep, they were.
So they beat Miami, and everyone is, I wouldn't say everyone is shocked, but people are like, wow,
shocked.
this is something. And they beat them handily beat them. So that's something that I think you certainly can't take away from them. 1-point win against Auburn. That's something that you can't take away from them. This LSU team has played very, very well, but I think that you've really got to watch out for this Florida team that has been playing also extremely well. And the reason why Florida won this past week, it certainly was not because of their 13 points of offense. It was because of the defense. It was because of this defense. 6 sacks against Nick Fitzgerald. Nick Fitzgerald gets 98 yards, throws for 98 yards, nothing else. No TDs, no interceptions, nothing. And that is why Florida won the game. And that is why I think that Florida has a good chance to do it this week. And how is Joe Burrow going to be able to handle the pressure that Florida is going to bring? That is going to be the most interesting thing for me this week. He seemed to do fairly well against Auburn in Auburn's front defensive line. How will he fare against Florida?
And I don't mean to say this as like a just kind of douchey remark, but I'm going to say it anyways. You want to know how he handles the pressure of Florida's pass rush? He hands it off to Nick Brossette. That's all he's got to do is hand it off. And the reason why I say that and make that joke is if I am LSU, I'm watching the game tape between the Wildcats and the Gators from earlier this year when Florida was 1-0 coming in, Kentucky was 1-0 coming in. Kentucky gets the win because that was a game where, first off, the defense, you limit Florida's rushing to 128 overall, and their leading rusher is their quarterback with 44. But on offense, it's let's not turn over the ball. Terry Wilson in that game only had 1 INT. And Benny Snell, you mentioned him in our first segment when we brought up Kentucky. He had 175 yards in that one. And they also had Terry Wilson, the quarterback, who had 100 yards of rushing in that one. That is how LSU, to me, has to attack this Florida defense, is they have to have a consistent running attack, because you look at it, the last game that the Tigers had against the Ole Miss Rebels, Joe Burrow, 96 yards on the ground. Brossette, 72 on the ground. You're going to want maybe a little bit more out of Brossette, but that is how you attack it. Or whether it be a Clyde Edwards, who also runs the ball very well. Joe Burrow just needs to hand off the ball. This rushing attack needs to be constant for LSU, because whichever defense, because both of these defenses are very, very strong, whichever one of these defenses is on the field more is going to get worn out, and that's the team that is going to lose this game. Whichever team has their defense out on the field for more time than the other one, basically, Ricky, what you can say is win the time of possession and you'll win the game. That's basically the key number one if either Florida or LSU wants to win this weekend.
Well, Ricky, I know that you're kind of saying like it'll be so easy to hand it off to Nick Brossette and he'll just go, but this past weekend, Florida, on 32 carries for Mississippi State, held them to just 104 total yards. Kylan Hill had 9 carries, 41 yards. Nick Fitzgerald had 20 carries, 32 yards. And Eris Williams had 3 carries for 31 yards. So there was nothing special there. They did a really good job of limiting anything offensively for Mississippi State. And this was a Mississippi State Bulldogs team that was at home. So I guess I just am not necessarily convinced that they can hand it off to Nick Brossette and he'll just run wild against them. And I know that's one game to look at for Florida, but at the same time, I think that that's kind of where the Gators are. They're playing some really good defense, and it'll be interesting to see how offensively they'll be able to do against LSU. But Joe Burrow, while he has not turned the football over, he's been really good. I don't think he's thrown any interceptions this season. Is he going to be able to step up and make some big plays? This is when's it going to be his time, Ricky? That's kind of what I'm wanting to try and get at. Is okay. Yes, you can hand the ball off to your running back. Yes, you can do that. But like we talked about that Penn State game against Ohio State, you want that ball, if you're Penn State, to be in the hands of Trace McSorley. If you're LSU, I mean, you want the ball to be in the hands of your quarterback to make a big play for you, to make multiple big plays for you. Is Joe Burrow there? Is he able to do that? Is he going to be able to do that in a big game here against Florida? And that's what I want to be able to see. That's where then I can maybe start to have some full confidence in what Joe Burrow will be able to do, not in just this game, but going forward. That's the biggest thing, because you can hand the ball off. I could be in there, you could be in there, Ricky, and hand off the ball to Nick Brossette. But you eventually, they would have to pull me if they wanted a big play from the quarterback position. I probably wouldn't be able to do that. You probably wouldn't be able to do that. Is Joe Burrow able to do that?
I don't know, man. Back in the old pickup football days, I had a cannon on me, and I could unleash the Rex Grossman dragon if I wanted to. So I mean, if you have a big play, you put the young kid in there, and I go, well, I'm not young anymore, but you put the kid in there, and I show you what I got from my arm. But for me,
I'm glad you still have confidence in yourself, buddy.
I do.
I'm really happy to know your confidence is unshattered.
I do. I mean, give me a football, and I'll just launch it on you guys. But the thing I look at is the defenses in this game, because you look at LSU, the most points they have given up in a game is 21. They gave up 21 to Auburn. They also gave up 21 to Louisiana Tech. You look at Florida, their defense has only given up the most points, 21, to Tennessee when they were in Knoxville. Now, the thing is, which defense is going to be more dominant in my mind? Because let's say Florida holds LSU to about 21, 22 points. All right, Auburn did that, and LSU was still able to get the win. I think that, there's either two ways this game goes for me. Either option A is it's exactly like the Auburn-LSU game, where it's two staunch defenses, and then LSU's offense is just better than Florida's, and they win the game by a point or by a field goal, by a very close margin, basically. Or option B, LSU kind of runs away with it a little bit and wins by 10 or 14 points because their defense is able to hold Florida to 13, 21 points, and Florida's defense is not able to hold LSU to just the 21 points that has been their most. And that's what I look at. It goes back to the time of possession thing, because whichever defense is on the field more, but that's the big question, is what game are we going to get? Is it going to be a staunch defensive game, much like LSU-Auburn? Kind of, you could also say Kentucky and Florida too, although Kentucky did win by 11, which that would be closer to option B. I'll say that. Will it be option A, which is Auburn, LSU, or are we going to get an option B where the score is more 27-16 in lieu of Kentucky and Florida that we saw earlier in the year?
Yeah, Ricky, this past weekend when Joe Burrow played against Ole Miss, he threw for 292 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then he added a rushing touchdown as well on almost 100 yards. That's a great game from Joe Burrow, and I don't want to take anything away from him. And I don't want people who are LSU fans to say, Brandon, you're saying that he's never made a big play. You blew them out 45-16. He probably didn't need to do any of that, and you would still win.
Mm-hmm.
What I am saying is, while I don't think that he's going to have those numbers, because I don't think that either side offensively will have those types of numbers from the quarterback. If they do, we are going to see a blowout, and certainly not an evenly played game. But what I do wonder is, can he have that play, that throw, stuff like that you look at and you go, those are the instincts of a really good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
What he did in the Auburn game, on the road at Auburn, 15 of 34, his completion percentage was 44%. Now, he had 249 yards and a touchdown with no interception. That was fine. That got them the win because he didn't turn the football over, and he was able to throw for a score. He needs to be able to repeat numbers similar to that. He cannot turn the football over. He cannot fumble. No interceptions, because either team is going to take advantage of that. This is going to be a very close game. I would really not be surprised if we had a similar type of game come down to the wire like it did in that Auburn LSU game, because these teams are scoring just about the same amount of points a game.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving up just about the same amount of points per game. LSU, I think, is a 2-point favorite in this game. I could see that easily swing over to the other side for Florida, or have it be Florida a 1-point favorite. I could see that. I can see LSU being the 2-point favorite right now. They're 5-0. They've been rolling, but Florida's been rolling. If this is not a close game, if this is not a defensive battle, I'll be surprised. I really don't see either offense breaking out and breaking loose in this one. I just don't see it because of how both defenses are and have been this season. But I think we're going to see a very good game. But I do also, talking about defense, switch to offense and say it's going to be the team that makes that 1 or 2 big offensive plays that gets the win. That's what it's going to be. While defense is going to be a huge part of it, I think the biggest thing will be the team that makes that big play in that crucial moment in the ball game. I'm not even saying it's going to be a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a huge 3rd down pass. Maybe it's a big 3rd down run. It's a 4th down run. It doesn't have to be. When I say a big play, I think people probably think, oh, he's talking about a 75-yard touchdown. It could be a 7-yard conversion.
Convert on 4th and 5.
To make it. That's a big play in a ball game. It doesn't need to be a big touchdown score. It may just need to be the big play at the right time, and that's who's going to win this game. And if it comes down to it, where there's a big fumble or a big interception at a crucial moment, well, there you go too. So that's who it's going to go to. This type of game, I don't see a blowout. I don't predict one. I don't think that'll happen.
So I'm going to make a NFL comparison for the Joe Burrow thing to try to hammer the point, and you can tell me if I'm getting it or if I'm completely off with it. So basically it's Joe Burrow. What are you going to be when the time comes and you need to make a play? Are you going to be like the Tom Brady's and the Big Bens who have made plays? Or, and I might sound like a little bit of Sean here because I know how Sean feels about this quarterback, or are you just going to be like a game manager like a Alex Smith or a Kirk Cousins, where it's like, hey, you got good stats, but you didn't make that legendary play like a Tom Brady or a Big Ben would have?
No, I think that's a bit of a knock to Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins. I don't think that they're that bad, but yes, that's basically what I'm getting at is that, are you going to be able to make that crucial play in that crucial moment? And that's where a Joe Burrow that's where he'll earn his stripes, I mean, That's how you do it. That's exactly how you do it. It's being able to, get up for those big moments and be calm and cool under pressure. That's what it's all about. And I think that we're going to see probably a number of those moments in a game like this, because it's an SEC game. It's certainly two teams that are fighting right now for a spot, because Florida, while they're not very high right now on the list in the playoff picture anywhere right now, I think that legitimately these two teams are fighting for that spot. LSU is fighting to keep their spot, as they are number 5 right now, and that looks really good for them. But I think Florida, if things possibly go south for Georgia, and Kentucky, goes back to being the Kentucky people thought they would be, and Florida is able then to fly up to the top, that's big. That's big for them. And then for LSU, they're trying to keep pace with Alabama, and they're in front of Auburn right now, and they would certainly have the tiebreaker with Auburn if anything came down to it. So this is a big game early in the season, week 6, but early in the season, and a crucial game.
Let me ask you this then. Let's turn the focus on to, if Florida wins. Let's say Florida wins this weekend. What do you think happens to LSU's playoff hopes? Because right now, kind of to set the picture, in the top 25 rankings, which I know are vastly different than the committee's rankings, LSU is number 5. They are above teams like Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and then Auburn. If they lose, it might not be hey, LSU is done, because they still have games against Georgia coming up just next week. They have games against Alabama coming up later this year. But if they lose to Florida this week and go to then 2-1 in the SEC, even though their playoff hopes might not truly be done, are they then kind of, when it comes to the playoffs, and can forget making the playoff?
If LSU loses this week, they are done. And the reason being is because I do not see them getting through Georgia and Alabama and going 2-0 against those teams. I don't see it. Maybe they don't lose both of them, but I don't see them winning both of them. So if LSU loses this weekend, they are cooked, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be completely honest. Even if they do win this game, I know we talked way earlier in the season. I think it was like right before week 2, right after they had that I'm going to say shocking win over Miami, because I didn't expect them to come out and beat the Hurricanes. I know it was also, I didn't expect the Hurricanes to be that bad this year, but I was kind of shocked that LSU beat Miami like they did. I don't think they beat both. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing that could get really interesting is the fact that if they do win this weekend, hope is still alive and things are looking really good. And then let's say they beat Georgia, and their one loss would come to Alabama. Let's say that's what happens. Well, then they've screwed Georgia out of a spot. They've screwed Auburn out of a spot, and it could then be Alabama, and then the team that everyone was expecting to be from the other team from the SEC, because right now people are thinking, oh, Alabama, and it'll be Georgia again. But that could be completely thrown out the window, and the surprise team could be LSU. I mean, that's what they could be doing, or they could be opening up that door even more for an undefeated Oklahoma team. So a lot of things could be happening in the next 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, also, too, like you brought up Oklahoma, I think if, let's say they play spoiler to a Georgia team, even if they do lose this week, they could play spoiler to a Georgia team and open the door for a Kentucky team to get into the SEC championship. Or let's say they beat Georgia. Georgia's the only, that's the only team that Georgia loses to is LSU. Then Georgia could get back into the title hope with hey, we can beat Alabama in the title game. But if they beat Georgia, And then Georgia, they got some tough opponents after that. Like after they play LSU, they play this same Florida team. They play Kentucky, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast. They play Auburn in a tough 4-game stretch. They could basically set up that 4-game stretch of like, oh man, now we really need to win these games because if we lose one more, then we're kaputs and probably won't even win our side of the SEC as well. So there's a lot to be going on. I know LSU, expect us to talk about them next week too, because depending on what happens in this one, next week they also have a big game on the schedule as they will play, or no, it's not this week, it's in 2 weeks. No, it is next week, where they'll play, it's next Friday, they'll play LSU. So LSU and Georgia will go head-to-head next week. So it's, yet again, expect us a week from now to be talking again about LSU because they'll have a big primetime game, and it could stay as number 2 v number 5 next week if LSU wins this one. I'm not going to ask you who wins with Florida and LSU because we'll make those in our picks, but any final thoughts before we move into said picks for week number 6?
I'm just really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a really fun weekend of college football all the way around.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section about LSU and Florida. What could happen if Florida plays upset in this one? What will that do to LSU's college football playoff hopes? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. And Brandon, let's officially end the podcast doing what we always do, making our picks for this week in college football. And if you're new to our picks, got to say it once, got to say it twice, got to say it a million times. We are not picking against the spread. We're just doing straight pick'ems this year. So next year, if you guys want us to, we'll pick against the spread. But for this year, we're doing straight pick'ems the whole way. Upsets are the going off the top 25 ranking and not necessarily the line, the betting line for each week. But how we do it is we pick every single top 25 game. And then at the very end, Brandon and I give our non-top 25 game to focus on. I give one, Brandon gives one, and that kind of adds an extra flavor into the picks. Brandon actually had a better week than me for once.
Heck yeah, he did.
I'm looking back, and it is the first time, I mean, everybody gets 1 week, I guess, where they can get one, but you get 1 week where, I mean, 1 out of 5 ain't the best average, but 1 week where you get a better record than me. You were 19-1, a near perfect. That damn Dukies kept you from being perfect. I went 16-4 on the week. I'm at 90-18. You're at 88-20, and we'll see what our picks this week do to our overall records. But the first one we're going to start off with is the 11 a.m. start Central Time. The first one, Northwestern at 1-3 on the road in East Lansing to play the 3-1 Spartans.
You know, I have been so disappointed with the Spartans this season. They were supposed to be this team that was, I say this every week. You might as well just play this track back every week because I say it every time. They were supposed to be this team that had all these returners on offense and defense, and they were going to be really good. And they've been really disappointing. So I know that they're at home, but I could care less. I'm going to say that Northwestern is going in there. They're going to win. Northwestern played tough against Michigan last week and only lost by 3. I say that the Wildcats are going to beat the Spartans.
Yeah, how you feel about Michigan State, I'll be completely honest. I feel about Northwestern. They were a team that we talked about, and it was like, oh, they're going to give Wisconsin a run for their money. It's going to be them and Purdue. And ever since they luckily beat Purdue, because the only reason they beat Purdue is because Purdue gifted them that victory with a penalty on the basically last offensive possession of that game, they have been a complete dud so far this year. I know that they almost beat Michigan last week, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, you didn't. You lose to Akron this year. You lose to Duke this year. Not even Virginia Tech without their main quarterback lost to Duke this year. I got to go with the Sparty in this one, Northwestern. I am on the opposite side of the table as you, Brandon, where Michigan State has upset you this year. Northwestern has upset me, and I'm going with Sparty to get the win at home. Then our annual check of what's going on in the SEC with number 1 Alabama versus unranked 1 and 4 Arkansas. 34.5 point favorite in Alabama. Is this just another consensus Alabama pick between the two of us?
No, big fan of Arkansas this week. I mean, if you saw what they did against Texas A&M last week, yeah, of course it's going to be Alabama. Alabama's going to rip this team to shreds. It's not even going to be funny. The Roll Tide are going to roll Arkansas.
Yeah, I can't wait for a week where I actually have trouble picking Alabama, but it'll come sooner rather than later. Then a game we talked about earlier in the podcast, the Red River rivalry, the Red River Showdown, whatever you call it. We got number 19 Texas going on the road. Well, actually, both teams are on the road because it's a neutral site game. They're going to play number 7 Oklahoma, who is undefeated. Oklahoma only a 7.5 point favorite. Who are you going with? Who are you going with in this one, B?
Ricky, we're talking about this game like you mentioned earlier, and it's going to be one of those games. It's a rivalry game for sure, as you well noted. Oklahoma's been putting up so many points with Kyler Murray. If you saw what he did this past weekend, then you were just absolutely in awe of what he was doing. If you didn't, go back and look at a little bit of it because it was really fun to be able to see what he did against Baylor. Texas has been that team that they started off with that first game against Maryland, and everyone went, well, here we go again, Tom Herman. Mark is his brother. But you look at that and you think, what's Texas going to do? And then they go out and they win their next 4 games. This game is, I think, more important for Oklahoma to win, honestly, because they have the better chance. And I do think that Oklahoma is going to win this one. They scored too many points. I don't see that Texas is going to be able to erase all of those in this game. And I just also don't see a way. While Texas can also score points, I don't see a way that Texas is going to be able to match the point totals that the Sooners can bring.
Yeah, I can see in my crystal ball a reality where Texas wins this game. I just don't know. If you put a gun to my head and said, hey, I want you to put money down on Texas, I don't know if I'd be able to. And would probably just let you shoot me because this is one where it's like, yeah, that line is close. Like Texas in this rivalry game has a shot to win. I just don't have the cojones to pick them over the Sooners, and I'm going to ride with the Sooners to win this one and take the easy, safe pick, get a win, get a loss, match with you, and move on into next week. But then we've got an easy Big 12 pick, in my opinion. You've got Kansas, you've got West Virginia. West Virginia is a 28.5 point favorite, and I'm sorry, Patrick, but if Kansas wins this one, I will be worried, and I will take the loss. I'm going with the Mountaineers to win over the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I'll make it easy for you, West Virginia.
Well, and then moving on, Big Ten country, Maryland, 3-1 on the year. Michigan, 4-1 on the year. In Ann Arbor, Brandon, is there any chance you're picking Maryland over Michigan?
There isn't. Maryland might be able to hang with Michigan for maybe the first half. But Michigan, being at home, I think that they're going to be able to get the win here. I know it was a close one last week against Northwestern, but Michigan, I feel like they're going to get this win.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like you mentioned, Michigan, yeah, they almost lost to Northwestern. To me, they've looked better since they did that opening half of the season against Notre Dame. I look at this Michigan team. They're at home. Maryland has been good, but you kind of look at their schedule and who they have played. Bowling Green's not that tough of a team. Honestly, got the big win against Texas, and you can't take anything away from them, but that was a close game, could have been a loss, and then you lose to Temple. Michigan is the hardest opponent you have yet to play this year. Good to go with the Wolverines to get it done at home. Then an interesting one in the ACC in Raleigh, North Carolina. We got the Wolfpack playing host to Boston College, the last time I pick them, they spur me. I picked them 2 weeks ago to win over Purdue. They spurred me, Brandon. They lost 30-13 against Purdue. A.J. Dillon did not have a good game. Let's hope they don't spur me this week, and I'm picking the 4-1 Eagles to win over the 4-0 Wolfpack in North Carolina.
Yeah, Boston College did a good job for me 2 weeks ago, too. They needed to lose to Purdue, and they did exactly what I needed them to do. So But thank you, BC, in that one. So looking at the game last week of NC State, they didn't look that good. They didn't look strong. They haven't been all that like, wow, that looks like a good team in the ACC. No, I would not be like, yeah, they have a chance. No, absolutely not. The only team in the ACC right now is Clemson. I mean, they are the front runner through and through. Really, everyone else is just kind of blah right now to me. But if NC State is able to look back and see what Purdue did in that game against Boston College, they picked off Anthony Brown 4 times. A.J. Dillon, they limit him to less than 60 yards on 19 carries. If they're able to figure out how Purdue did that defensively, I think that NC State will be able to get the win. This game's at home. NC State, I'm picking them. I am not sure if I'm happy picking them, but I'm picking them, and I'm hoping that we'll roll in this one.
Well, and with the next one, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we talked about this game in length in one of our segments. We got number 5 LSU going up against number 22 Florida. LSU only a 2-point favorite this week in Gainesville. This one is one we're probably going to disagree on, Brandon. Who are you going with, the Tigres or the Gators?
Ricky, I don't have my button with me, but I am going to go with the upset. I'm going to pick Florida to win at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. I like their defense. I like what Florida has been doing. They just seem on a roll. And I know people will say, Brandon, well, doesn't LSU? Yeah, they do too. But I'm just not as convinced with Joe Burrow. And people are going to say, Brandon, when are you going to be convinced with Joe Burrow? If he wins this week against Florida, I think I'll start to be convinced. But until something like that happens, I am not. They had a good win, LSU did, against Auburn. It came down to the end. I think Auburn did a bad job of trying to close that game out because clearly they didn't. I don't think that will be the case with Florida. They'll find a way to win. They're at home. The Florida Gators do not lose this game, and they knock off number 5.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the other side. I'm going with LSU. And at this time next week, Brandon will be saying, hey, you know what, Joe Burrow, I believe in you. You put a foot in my mouth, bro. And you won this game, handing it off to Brissett and converting on some key third downs, maybe even a 4th down in this one. I got LSU winning in the swamp, and they're going to keep their playoff hopes alive as they move on into next week to play the Georgia Bulldogs. Then I'm going to do what we usually do when we got something that we can package together. 3 games that I think that both of us, I should say, are going to pick the same ones. Florida State, Miami, Iowa State and Oklahoma State, Indiana, OSU. I'm going Miami, Oklahoma State, OSU. How about you?
Yeah, Miami, Florida State's been a disappointment this season. Oklahoma State, even though they've been an up-and-down team, they're at home. I think that they'll put up too many points for Iowa State to hang with them. And Ohio State, as much as I think that Indiana could do it, at least make the game fun. When I say could do it, I don't mean necessarily win. And I'd love to see them give Ohio State a little bit of trouble just to keep the Buckeyes on their toes. Ohio State is at home in Columbus. They're not losing this game.
Well, the thing I find funny, and I am going back, let's see, week 2, were they ranked? I'm trying to see if they were. I don't think they were. They weren't ranked week 1 either. The interesting thing with this one is, although I am going with you and picking Oklahoma State, when you look back, whenever Brandon, and I've gone with you, so it's me too, whenever you've picked Oklahoma State, they've lost, and whenever you've picked against them, they have won. So
yeah, well, I just wish we could stop picking Oklahoma State games, so if they could get themselves out of the top 25, not this week, but maybe another week, that'd be preferable.
Hey, I mean, they're close. They're right at number 25. Did you give a pick for the Indiana OSU game, though?
I did, Ohio State.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I cut you off on that one. Then we got a Pac-12 matchup. This one I think we're going to differ on. Colorado playing host to Herm Edwards and his Sun Devils. Who you got, the Buffs or the Devils?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, that this game is at 3 o'clock, so no one should be asleep yet. So
Brandon might watch it.
Someone might actually be able to see this game. But I'm going to go with Colorado. They have been playing pretty good. They're 4-0. They just beat a really lifeless UCLA team. They, earlier in the season, beat a lifeless Nebraska team, 33-28. Close, but they still beat them. And this Arizona State, yes, they are a team that is improved. They're better. They're not a bad team at all. But I think that Colorado could definitely get the win there. After their two wins at the beginning of the season, after their big upset of Michigan State, they did lose to San Diego State 28-21. They did lose to Washington 27-20. Yes, both close games. And then they beat Oregon State. I'm going to say on the road that they will beat Colorado.
Oh, so you're changing it. You are going with ASU?
Oh, excuse me. I'm going to say on the road they're going to lose. They're going to lose to Colorado. I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm confused. Sometimes you do too much talking for these things. You forget who you're actually going with. So I'm going with Colorado at home.
I made that clear because for me, I am going with ASU. For me, it's clear and simple. Colorado, their schedule is weaker than UCF's schedule. Ooh, you beat an 0-4, or now 0-4, but you beat an 0-3 UCLA team. Oh no, you narrowly beat a Nebraska team that's got some issues and can't win a game. You beat New Hampshire. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, but look at that, Ricky. Look how easy it is. You don't have to beat many people, and you get into the top 25. I just want to make that very clear for you. So that's how easy it is.
What I'm saying is I'm going to go with the team that's actually played some opponents and could have easily won. I know the woulda, coulda, shoulda, but could easily, if the ball bounces one way or another, could be an undefeated 5-0 team right now, and they actually did beat Michigan State. I'm going to go and pick the Sun Devils in this one. Herm Edwards having this team riled up. This is not a team that's on the same level as Washington. They're not going to be on the same level as Stanford. This Colorado team's susceptible to an upset, and I'm going to go ahead and hit my button where ASU going to get the win over the Buffs in Boulder, Colorado this weekend. Then, speaking of that the UCF team, they will play SMU this weekend. Who you got, the Knights or the Mustangs?
Going with the Knights.
Yeah, I think this one's easy. Like, I would just roll UCF until they lose. I mean, I can't remember the last time they did lose, which was 2 years ago, obviously, but going to go with the Knights over the Mustangs in Orlando, Florida. Then we've got three. I'm just going to package them together. 3 SEC matchups. Kentucky, Texas A&M should be a tough one. Texas A&M is technically the favorite in this one, although Kentucky is ranked higher. I'm going with the Wildcats. Then Vanderbilt, Georgia. Georgia should win this game easily. And then Auburn, only a 3.5-point favorite, but I still have them beating Mississippi State in Starksville. What do you got for these next 3 SEC games?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kentucky. I think that even on the road, they're a hot team right now, and you got to always be wary of the hot teams. Georgia, I think, should win easily at home, and Auburn should definitely blow out Mississippi State, a team that's really struggling right now.
What did you give the Kentucky one? Did you say Kentucky?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I said Kentucky.
And just wanted to make sure. And then just kind of winding them up, we got 4 left. Another Pac-12 one. Washington, UCLA. Brandon's going to pick Chip Kelly to get his first win, right?
No, I think UCLA is a team in disarray. I think they're very bad. I think Washington should win easily.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. And I mean, the next game in the Big Ten, I think you can make the same thing. Or Nebraska, they're a team in disarray. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor to have a huge game. Wisconsin gets the win in Madison.
Yeah, Wisconsin gets the win. I was going to say, man, they don't lose in Camp Randall Stadium, but surprise, they do. And BYU showed us that. But Wisconsin should get the win. The last thing that the Badgers need is for Nebraska, and how bad they've been this season, to come in and beat them. So Wisconsin will get the win.
And we got a prime time matchup. This one on ABC. It's kind of weird because usually Notre Dame's on NBC, but you got Notre Dame at number 6, Virginia Tech at 24. Brandon, who are you going with, Book or are you going with Willis?
I've got to go with Ian Book. Notre Dame gets this win. They looked good last week against Stanford. They played good football, Notre Dame did, as a team. Yes, they lose their captain this past week, and that's not good. You never like to see that, but I think Notre Dame on the road still gets this win. Virginia Tech is not going to be the same without their quarterback. Just not going to happen. So the Fighting Irish get the W.
Well, in this one, I got to go differ from you, and there's
Please
about
do. I'm happy to have you do that.
There's about two reasons why I am going to differ from you. First off, what you talking about Willis, and Ryan Willis showed me that he can ball out this weekend. I don't think he's going to be scared going up against a Notre Dame roster, although it is going to be a very tough opponent for him to go up against in his second game starting this season. The second reason why I am going to pick them this week, and I got to double check my stats to make sure that I am not fibbing here before I say this. Yep. Virginia Tech is going to unveil a bronze statue to honor former coach Frank Beamer before the Hokies home game against Notre Dame. This team's going to get riled up. This team is going to win one more for the Beamer, and they are going to go ahead and beat Notre Dame. This is going to be an emotional group. They're unveiling the statue for Frank Beamer, who's been a great Hokie coach, the only coach that I've known at Virginia Tech ever since I've been born. Obviously, Justin Fuente, now the head coach, so now the second coach I've known at Virginia Tech. But they are going to be emotional. Willis is going to get them to win. Notre Dame, they'll be shocked, 5-1, and we'll be talking about what are their playoff chances as a one-loss team. Then our last one in the Pac-12, Brandon will officially be asleep by this time at 9:30. 2-2 Utah, talking about two Utes here. They'll be taking on 4-1 Stanford in Stanford, California. Brandon, who you got?
Going with Stanford. Going with Stanford at home.
I think it's easy. Got to go with Stanford in this one. And then our non-top 25 games, I have a theme going with mine where last week I picked Old Dominion to beat East Carolina. They spurred me, so I said, double not so fast, not today, not picking you. I'm going to pick your opponent this week. So Lane Kiffin and the FAU Owls going to beat Old Dominion this week. Watch, their quarterback now will throw for like 5 touchdowns, and I'll get this game wrong. But what's the non-top...
Wait for Old Dominion to win.
What's the non-top 25 matchup you're going with, and who you picking?
I'm going to take the Iowa-Minnesota game, and I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes to get the W.
Well, that's going to do it for our picks this week. That's going to do it for another Primetime Podcast. Can't wait next week. Hopefully Brandon will be off assignment here at MVP. We'll have him back in the studio next week. Want to thank you guys for giving us a listen on anywhere you listen to us, YouTube, podcast services around the world, whether that be iTunes, whether that be Spreaker, whether that be, I'm trying to think, whether it be all of them. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but thank you guys for listening. Make sure to check us out on Patreon to help support the channel. You can also do so by buying an MVP t-shirt down below in the description. You can also do that at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, make sure to give us, please, a 5-star ranking or rating on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. Want to thank you guys again for checking out the podcast this week. And as always, have a good day, everybody.